Hi, Bill here. I'd like to look at some checkmates in two. The bishop is defending against both possible checks by the rooks. White moves one rook, the bishop's deflected, and the other rook gives mate. This time the rook is in the way of the queen from delivering checkmate. So we move the rook out of the way of check, then the queen can move to the mating square. White starts off with a discovered check. So we move the bishop, and it's a double check as well. A double check, the king must move. So now the rook goes to the back, mate. This time, white opens up the position with a sacrifice. Rook takes the pawn, king takes, queen checkmates. This time we start with a check on the back line. Now the bishop gives mate as the rook is pinned and cannot block the check. Now again we open up the game with a sacrifice. The rook swings across and the knight stops the king from escaping. The knight's in the way of the queen taking the pawn mate. So we start by getting the knight out of the way with check. Now the queen can mate. Now if we capture on the same square twice, we'll have one of the standard mating patterns. So queen takes the pawn, and now the rook takes queen mate. Again we capture on the same square twice. Rook takes the pawn, queen takes pawn, mate. At the moment the king is defending against both checks by the rooks, so we start by tempting the king into the corner. Now the other can safely mate. Black has a weak back rank, so we'll start off by sacrificing the defending knight, and now we have the checkmate on the back rank. Now we capture again on the same square twice, and the bishop mates by itself. Now we have the bishop and knight lined up against the king, so we've got lots of possible discovered checks with the knight. Now we have a very fancy double mate with the knight, so we'll look at a double check. Now we've got a very nice mate with the knight and bishop. Okay, king's looking a bit open. We'll start by checking on the diagonal. Forces black to self-pin himself. Now the rook is not defending the pawn because it's in a pin. So the queen takes the pawn mate. Now we don't have any queen or rook, but we're going to mate just with this humble pawn. The bishop stopping the escape square. Okay, so we'd have a mate here if this knight wasn't blocking the rook. So we'll move the queen down to the back, deflecting the knight, and then the rook will move in mate. Well, we've got this is really a mating one. Black can delay things by move, but he just does a useless blocking move and gets mated anyway. Now we have the classic smothered mate position. So with a queen sacrifice, we force the black to trap his own king. Now the knight can give mate all on its own sim. Now we have the standard mate with the knight and rook. We start off by bringing the knight into the attack with check, king to the corner, rook swings across, mate. Now we've got a fancy little mate where we use an X-ray defence. So the queen checks on the diagonal, it's defended by the bishop by X-ray. Now we have a mate with a lone bishop. So we'll start off by a check. Now we have a mate because the rook cannot block because it's in a pin. Now if this pawn wasn't here, we'd have a mate with a rook over here. So we'll start off with a sacrifice, and now the other rook can mate. This is an unusual mate, a mate with two knights. Knight moves in check, king must move in the corner, and the knight delivers checkmate. I'll start off with a capture, and this is an unusual mate where you check in 2 moves in a row with a bishop. Now we have a mate because the queen covers the escape square. We'll start this one off with a double check, king must move, and then we have a mate on the back line. Oh, we've got the double check. Got the queen lined up with the king, so we've moved the knight out of the way. Double check, king must move. And now we've got a checkmate here with the knight, queen and pawn all helping. Here we have a standard back rank mate. And another back rank mate with a useless blocking move. And a back rank mate where we sacrifice the queen to destroy the defender. Now we've got a neat mate where we sacrifice the queen and we follow up with mate with a rook. Another mate where we start off with a double check forcing the king to move, and then we have a very neat mate with the knight and the bishop. Now this is a really fancy mate. White would love to check with the queen, but the king can slip out, so we sacrifice the pawn, and it doesn't matter if he takes it with a rook or queen, we mate. So the idea of the pawn sacrifice was to block black from escaping. Again, we've got the mate with a rook, and the rook swings behind the king. We'll check on the back line, and the rook gives mate. The king's vulnerable to attack on the h-file, so the queen gives a check, then comes in mate with the pawn covering the escape. Now we've got this so-called windmill mate with the two rooks. This rook cuts the king off, the other rook gives a check, and now we can mate on the back line. Now we have interesting position. Black looks pretty safe, but we open the king up with a sacrifice. Now we create a scissor checkmate with the two bishops. A mate with minor pieces, not so common. Knight gives a check, king has to go back. Knight gives a check, king goes back and check. So that's actually mating 3. So I think that's the end of the section. Okay, thank you for watching.